Okay, well, I think we can get started. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our town hall. Tonight, we're going to be talking about LORs. LORs are letters of recommendation. So this is the support from your teachers, your counselor, that you'll receive for your college applications. I'm Maureen Delaney. I'm an educational counselor at Prep Matters, and I work with students applying to college and young people applying to graduate school. And we are so fortunate this evening to have a guest host. Patrice Arrington is here with us, and I'm going to let her speak a little bit about herself before we get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our town hall. Again, I'm Patrice Arrington. I am the Director of College and Career Services at Wilson High School. We don't want to put Woodrow on it anymore. I have been doing college counseling basically for about 8 years now. I help the entire school, but mostly around this time with our juniors and seniors, helping them prepare for college, with the college process, whatever careers they want after high school. And then I also work with our alumni, after they leave our beautiful walls, kind of getting them ready for the next 4 years. And also once they graduate college and what their career path will be. And I'm very excited to be here and working with Maureen today for you and Prep Matters. So we are very excited to present to you tonight.
Thank you so much, Patrice. What you talk about in this idea of preparing and what's after high school, this is sort of sets the context for understanding the letters of recommendation, what they are, the purpose that they serve. And I guess to start, I just want to say that this time of life, putting together a college list and looking behind high school kind of shifts a student's relationship with their school also, because students, you're now in the driver's seat with your plans to go to college and to continue studying after high school. So your high school network becomes your support system. And like I said, you're in the driver's seat. So just keep that in mind as we move through our presentation tonight, because again, the letters of recommendation are in support of your next step in life. So just keep that in mind. And okay, so how important are these letters and where do they fit into the whole scheme of things, this college application process? Okay, so they, in the scheme of things, they fall after your courses, your grades, the strength of your curriculum, and your essay, that information about you as a student, your scores, all of that is extremely important because after all, you're the person applying for a spot at the college or university. However, colleges want to see another perspective. They want to see, they want to learn about you through teachers, through your counselor. And this, the National Association of College Admissions Counselors puts together a report each year. The last report was 2019. But, and so what they found through the report, more than half of the colleges place considerable or moderate importance on these letters of recommendation. So some schools, Penn State, Indiana, the UC schools, they may not be reading letters, but many, many schools do. So let's keep that in mind. And again, that they're really important as far as supporting what you've done in school and elaborating a little bit on who you are as a person.
And just, Maureen, to go into a little bit of those schools that may not be reading letters or accepting letters, it's a way for you to then put more about yourself in the application process. And that comes with your essays and things like that, just in case they can't get that entire context of you because they're not reading the letters of recommendation, but they are reading and looking more closely in that application and in your essay to kind of find out about you and if you're a good fit for that university.
Great. So who writes them, Patrice?
So usually who writes those recommendations are your teachers. You want to have about 2 letters recommendation, academic recommendations from those teachers. And you typically start asking your teachers in your junior year, normally about now or after AP exams. I know a lot of you are gearing up for those or have started taking those. And you want those 2 recommendations or those 2 teachers that come from a core subject matter, right? So not necessarily your PE teacher or anything like that, but a core subject. You want someone who knows you, right? So your teachers are the ones that have known you in the classroom, have been able to be with you and seen your progress from the time you started sitting in their classroom from the beginning of the school year all the way through to the end of the school year. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, I get the question all the time, like, can I ask a freshman teacher or a sophomore teacher? You want a teacher who knows you best and can add and provide some context to you that may not come through in that transcript or in the numbers. So being able to find that person that you had a rapport with, and it doesn't necessarily have to be someone that you got an A in the classroom for. Like maybe you're that type of student that had progress, like it didn't start off great in the beginning, but really made some serious progress throughout the year. Your concepts were better. You started diving more into the subject matter, but really came out and shine through in that entire year. And that teacher can speak to that as well. You could have other recommendations from teachers. A lot of students go to performing arts schools or choir or theater. So then a teacher recommendation from one of those teachers is also going to be very helpful, especially if you're going to major in one of those subject areas.
Great. I just want to say that the pandemic and online learning, it sort of threw a little bit of a wrench into students knowing exactly who knows them well from junior year. Hopefully you were turning your cameras on during your Zoom classes, but regardless, it is challenging right now. And this is what colleges are saying about that dilemma. Of course, 2 core academic teachers, they would like one from junior year, but they understand that one teacher may just be from sophomore year this year, that juniors, you may be selecting one junior year teacher and one sophomore year teacher. They really stress the idea of who knows you, like who's the best source of information to you, about you. So, and again, related to math, science, English, history or social studies, and your foreign language. So those core academics. And really, I guess the idea is who's the best source of information to talk about who you are now, right? So the whole idea of junior year, really the context of that is the colleges need to know who you are as a learner at this point in time. So that's the idea behind it. Every once in a while, there's a rare case where a college may want a peer recommendation. So keep that in mind. There are 2 academic teachers, but you also may be, you may have a portfolio. So you have, music, art, or theater portfolio. So you have your creative teacher also speaking on your behalf. So that could be the other. The other could also mean you have had an internship and that you have a supervisor who also would like to contribute to and support you in your college application. So, okay, what do they contribute? What do these letters contribute? And, what kind of information do they carry? So they reach beyond the numbers, beyond those grades and scores that are in your transcript or your ACT or SAT scores, your AP exam scores or IB. So all of these numbers, they go beyond that. And it's a teacher's perspective, an adult perspective who can talk about, stories from the classroom, your personality, how you learn, how you socialize among other students. What leadership role might you play in the classroom? And again, view beyond and into character, leadership, style of learning, and to really kind of create a 3D effect to some of these numbers. These letters can be used in tough cases. You know, when at this time, when many schools have gone test optional, they may be digging a little deeper into your essay to say, oh, we really need to get to know these students because we don't have as much information, you know, and as many numbers. So what can we find in the essay? How can we know more? And the teacher recommendations and counselor recommendation can offer more information.
And they give an insight of your,
Mhm.
sorry, my thing went mute. It gives you more, the teacher recommendation or the counselor recommendation also gives a little bit more of a personal touch. And it speaks to your personal integrity too. So a lot of times that doesn't come through in a transcript or in, you know, the numbers of the SAT scores and things like that. So everybody has a story. So these letters are very important when it, like, especially again, as Maureen was speaking of, for those more highly competitive schools where everyone has these great numbers, these great qualifications. What is it about you that's going to make a school say, yes, I need that student at my university, that goes beyond the success of high school, right? So that's what's super important about these letters of recommendation.
Okay, who sends them? Okay, so the school is responsible for sending, but not securing. So what does that mean? That means it's a student's responsibility to ask the teachers to be clear about deadlines, to offer information about themselves, and to really see the asking process, to really be involved in making sure that teacher has what he or she needs when they sit down to write the recommendation. But the school will send what's sent is actually a high school report. And what will be included is your transcript, a high school profile, which is information about your high school, and your 2 teacher recommendations and your counselor recommendation. So the school will send those. And Patrice will talk about this later, but these letters are confidential. So the school will send them on through Naviance or other electronic options. And this you can invite teachers directly through your Common App or your Coalition app. And also they have a space for other recommenders. So these are letters that are uploaded. Again, you will not have access to reading them, but they will accompany your submission to the school. You can also email a letter. Let's say you do have a supervisor from an internship who would like to send a letter on your behalf, but is going to send it directly to the admissions office. What you want to find out is will they accept an additional letter, and should it be sent to the admissions office email address or to the regional representative? So it takes an extra little bit of research to find out how to direct that extra optional letter. Also, that can be mailed, but I would suggest really reaching out through email, finding out that.
And most of your schools are using Naviance, at least well, most of them are. I can't speak to all the schools of everyone who might be listening tonight, but that's a really great way. So you're making that letter of recommendation request through Naviance, and then that is sending an email to your teacher and say, hey, Sally Sue has requested a letter of recommendation. And then they can go in and see exactly when your deadlines are. But we want to make sure that if you're asking, and we'll get into that in another slide, but if you're asking that teacher to write a recommendation for you, make sure they're well aware of those deadlines, just in case. So you always want to make sure you're on top of your stuff and letting people know when you want those recommendations completed. And there was a question in the chat said, is it a good idea to request to see the recommendation before it's submitted? And I'll go into that a little bit of in confidentiality. You really don't want to look at those recommendations. You should be choosing choosing teachers that you know are going to write well on your behalf. So you really don't need to look at it before it's submitted. it's kind of like if you ask to see, it's kind of like you're saying that I don't trust what you're going to say about me. And that's not the right message to send. So I don't think it's a good idea to ask to see that recommendation. Teachers may be okay with that, but once it's submitted, it's a confidentiality thing. And we'll go into that a little bit later, that it's best if you're choosing the right teachers to write on your behalf, there should be absolutely no need for you to ask to see it, because if a teacher says yes, they're going to write a very well recommendation for you. So you don't have to worry about them putting something nasty in or anything like that. So it will be a well-written recommendation.
Yes, if they agree, if they say yes.
If they say yes, absolutely.
Also, the colleges that understand that these are confidential because they want a candid response from a teacher, right? And they want this to be a direct conversation between a teacher and an admissions representative, I mean, on paper, but so it's understood that this is written in confidence. So again, who do you choose? Now, Patrice outlined 2 core academic teachers, but so how do you decide which 2, right? So you need to think carefully about your relationships with your teachers. Who knows you well? And so that might be a teacher who, in the class you've struggled, so that you've met with them on a regular basis, and they understand the way you think and you learn, and they've observed the fact that you really dug in and you really challenged yourself to excel in a particular area that wasn't perhaps your strongest area. So you need to think about, okay, who really knows me and knows the way I can work, and someone you have a good relationship with. It may also be a teacher you may not have spent a lot of time with them at a class, but you know that there's a mutual respect for each other, right? That you've done well, that you've worked and been attentive, and you know that this teacher recognizes this in you. So again, you want someone who can talk about your development, your growth. And again, the answer is yes, that this year a sophomore teacher can write for you. But again, it's really, who are you currently? And really don't be timid, because teachers are asked year after year. So it may be the first time that you're asking a teacher, but keep in mind that this is part of their experience as a teacher, so that they're expecting this to happen this time of year. And sometimes it may not happen until the fall. You may, there are some students and some schools that wait until students return at the beginning of September, and then start putting together a plan for these letters of recommendation. So it'll be important to really follow your school's instruction, in addition to, a good sort of path to asking. And we add there, Patrice?
Oh, we had a question in the Q&A about who is it better to have a core teacher who doesn't know you as well, or like someone like a Spanish teacher or someone else that may know you the best to write that recommendation? That was one of the questions. And for Wilson, I can say we want that recommendation, of course, if you can get it from 2 core teachers, right?
Yes.
But there is going to be certain situations or certain cases where there's a teacher that may have had you since freshman year, and they know you inside and out. They know that your after school activities, they know your leadership development, they know that maybe you weren't the best student in the freshman year and really made a turn and is thriving academically. They know how you learn. And if that's the teacher that knows you the best, then it's okay to ask that teacher to write for you. So yes, that's to answer that question. I mean, I wouldn't suggest it.
And Spanish, yes, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. I just want to throw one idea out here, and that is, you also want to think about your vision for yourself as a college student. So if you have a plan to study math, you want to make sure that you have a teacher. Let's say you want to study engineering, you want some STEM representation in your teacher recommendations.
Absolutely.
So think about your strengths and the teachers, but also it's the matrix expands a little bit farther by saying, okay, what's my area of interest, and is there someone here that can speak to my strengths in that area? Okay, so how to ask. There's a funny piece from the Atlantic. I'll just read to you. It's how to ask for a letter of rec. It's about a teacher in a high school experiencing students asking for recommendations. So in late September, seniors case my classroom in the early morning and charge in before I've turned on my laptop. They corner me at the copy machine and at the entrance to the faculty lounge. They each want the same thing, a letter of recommendation. And when I say yes, the student presses a crumpled brag sheet into my hands and runs in the opposite direction. Most teachers who have seniors as students are lucky if fewer than 20 ask, and generous if they agree to do 15. Writing a meaningful letter of recommendation takes time, a luxury that teachers don't have. Still, it is difficult to say no to a worthy student, especially one who has made a public request with pleading puppy eyes. So our Patrice is going to open up with how to ask. What's a good way to ask? How do you do this?
So I thought I just got a tickle out of that story, because that happens in real life to a lot of our teachers, where they get cornered, where it's kind of funny. But we want to make sure so what we have our students do is that we have them send an email. And I know in today's virtual world right now, that is the best way to do it. We're not in person, so you can't physically ask a teacher. Some of you may be in person, but I think that the appropriate way is to send an email, stating who you are, what asking, Sally, Mr. Nisley, hey, Mr. Nisley, I would love for you to write a recommendation for me. I had your class in 10th and 11th grade, your US history class and your AP role class, whatever it is, and said, I really had a great rapport with you. Give a little bit of background, a little context, and then ask, tell them, you might know what your deadlines are. Most deadlines are the same. They haven't changed much. You have October 15th, November 1st, regular decision, whatever. We're not getting into that. You can give them a couple of school choices that you might have in mind. A lot of times, some teachers may have gone to that particular school and can write, to that school. But that's the kind of appropriate way. And then if you see them in person, or you're able to see them in person, then you can ask again. Most of the time, the teacher will have some kind of, questionnaire that you have to fill out, especially if it's a popular teacher. For us, we have something called a Tiger Paws self-evaluation survey that we require every single student to fill out, and that's for the teachers can use that, but it's mostly for counselors. But it has to be an in-depth kind of thing. You can't answer with one sentence, one word. It has to give a little bit more. You got to think about this and answer the questions to the best of your ability. You don't need anything that's 20 pages long, but you definitely need something that's going to give them a little bit of, some perspective. And some teachers may have their own questions that they have them answer. They might have you, hey, submit a small resume, because maybe they don't know exactly what you do outside of the school. You could be a designer. You could teach little kids a foreign language, and that's something great, because maybe it's a foreign language class and you're an awesome student in the classroom, and then on top of that, little Johnny Sue teaches elementary school kids the language that he has learned in class or something. I'm just throwing that out as an example, but that's the best way to kind of do it, and make sure you're filling out that brag sheet, giving them an activity list, or anything that they're asking for, but do it in depth. Make sure they have enough about you. Also, once you're done with that, you want to follow it up with a thank you. Once they've written that recommendation, it does take a long time to write a recommendation. We have 439 seniors in our class, and they get a recommendation from their counselor plus their 2 teachers. and it takes time. So got to give your teachers some time to write. It is very inappropriate to come to them a day before a deadline and say, hey, can you write my letter of recommendation? We have students give a 30-day notice before their first deadline. So that gives them 30 days. Because if you're dealing with multiple students, you need time to put some thought into that. And no teacher wants to give a bad recommendation, and they won't give a bad recommendation. But now you're intruding on their time if you don't give them enough time to write that really great recommendation for you. And again, if they're saying yes to you, it will be a well thought out, beautiful recommendation that's going to speak mounds to you as a person and to you as a student.
Great, good. I just want to add to the brag sheet idea. So you have this brag sheet that you're sharing with your teachers and your counselor, but it also can serve you as the beginning of your activity list for your application. So that exercise of thinking about what you've done, through high school since you were, started freshman year, that, reflecting on your accomplishments, your extracurriculars, all of this information that you want to share with your teachers and counselor can also be used for your application. So doing that now early is a great start to, say, your activity list on your college application. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. We had a question about in a large public high school, it's very difficult for a counselor or a counselor to know you well. And I'm breathing living proof, and maybe 439 students isn't large enough to some other larger high schools, but that's the purpose of that brag sheet or that questionnaire, is being able to give that counselor some depth, some context, and some information that they may not know about you. So that's why it needs to be filled out to a T. And again, you may not see your counselor. You might be one of those students that have never gone to the counselor's office. And here you are your senior year, and they're trying to write a letter of recommendation for you, and they don't know you in terms of you. But it is recommended that every counselor write a recommendation for every student. So that's why we have that Tiger Paw self-evaluation form. And we also have a parent brag sheet. We have the parents speak about the students and tell us wonderful things about Johnny Sue. So it gives us a little bit more meat to that recommendation, especially if you don't or haven't met your counselors or don't know your counselors, because maybe some of you do online scheduling. You don't have to go into the counselor's office or see them, but that's not the case with everybody. But that's why those questionnaires or those brag sheets are extremely important.
Yes, and Patrice, good point again, just to say once more that all counselors will write a letter of recommendation, and then the asking is the teachers. The choosing and the asking are the two core academic teachers. Okay, so here's the confidential part of it. Letters are confidential, sent from the high school to the schools on your college list. So make sure that your high school it has an updated list, and that your counselor is prepared to send that out. And on your application, you will waive your right to read the letters. So there will be, when you set up, for example, your common application, you only do this once, and you go into one of the school portals, and you'll have to waive your right in order to put in your school information. So it is part of your application, just to give you a heads up. When you run into that, it'll say FERPA, which is the Family
Education Rights and Privacy Act.
Thank you. So you waive your right to read it. And so that's how you can recognize it. Anything else to include there?
I'm sure. A lot of times I get the question, what is FERPA? Why do I have to sign that? Why do I have to waive my right? I might want to read my recommendations. To a college admissions person who is going to review your application, they would like to see that is waived, because again, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, is if you're trying to read your recommendations, that it doesn't seem as honest if you could write them yourselves because you know what I mean? Like if a teacher is sending you a recommendation, you could redo it and write it yourself. So if you're waiving that right to see those recommendations or read those recommendations, the colleges know that it's coming directly from the institute, from the school, and that the student had no involvement in that whatsoever. So it's kind of that honesty kind of situation where you waive your right, you're not trying to botch anything. You're not trying to do anything different. It is coming from the recommender directly to the institution, and they want to see that that right is waived. There's no reason for you to read your recommendations. Again, if you're asking teachers that know you well and they're saying yes, they will not write a bad recommendation for you.
Okay, so then what's in it, right? So just to take the mystery out of thinking about what in the world did they put in here, they put in specific examples from class. I mean, these are the kinds of things that a college wants to read about. Tell us a little bit about what happens in the classroom. Can you remark on the academic strengths of this student? Not necessarily, sports or extracurriculars. They really want to know, after all, it's an application to move from high school to college, right? So how does the student learn, and what are their strengths in the classroom? What kind of learning style do they have? And just some insight, some real personal insight on how a student may have handled challenges, as we all experience challenges in life. How did a student handle challenges in the classroom? And Carleton College did a workshop with teachers. And so there are some examples here, just so you know what's included here. So a reference, Dominic, in the first comment here, the teacher talks about Dominic multitasking, right? He had substantial roles in both plays last year, but he never asked for an extension on a project, a paper, and didn't indicate that he was struggling. He solicits feedback and receives counsel with remarkable grace. So giving and taking in the classroom. The second paragraph, Siobhan, it talks about Siobhan tutoring her peers. When she struggles, she's able to take on a very productive learning role, and also if she struggles, it's not overly stressful. She has a systematic way of addressing it, and also sharing information with her peers. And the last one, in class, at least once a month, I would find Mike posing a question about a solution method or a definition that showed a deeper contemplation of the nuances of the topics. Okay, so a student that questions were at the level of a graduate student's thinking of chemistry. So again, just saying, listen, this is, by posing these questions, I can see he's really doing advanced work in my class. So this is the kind of information that might be shared in a recommendation.
And they want to know your intellectual curiosity, if you're motivated and dedicated. And once you arrive on their campus, are you going to take advantage of all the opportunities that school has to offer? And that's where that finding fit comes in as well. So that's where that letter of recommendation gives that real good context to an admissions counselor about that. So these are awesome examples of what a teacher recommendation could look like that speaks highly to things that are happening in the classroom, your dedication, that you are dedicated to your art or your theater, but you're still are doing what you're supposed to do in the classroom. So those are awesome. If you guys have this recording or this PowerPoint, that's kind of, you can look and see that those are some of the things that teachers are writing about students.
Okay, so we have a couple of questions. Someone asked about homeschoolers and letters of recommendation. So I think anybody, with the homeschoolers, anybody that a student has worked with on a project. So I know there's a lot of project-based work. So again, someone who can kind of vouch for that intellectual curiosity, and who can speak to a student's involvement in a particular project. So yeah, any people that are involved in the learning cooperative, I think can speak on the child's behalf. And then there was someone who had a question about brag sheet and activities. And so the brag sheet the brag sheet is the same as, say, an activity list or a student resume. And again, it's not to be sort of sent and say, cornering the teacher and then saying, here. In a very large school, there isn't time to sit down one-on-one and have a conversation with the student, but that can happen in smaller schools where a teacher might say, listen, let's meet for 10 minutes. I'd like to learn more about what you've done over the summer, if it's early on in senior year. I've seen that happen with students. But the comment really is, again, there's a questionnaire. So the brag sheet will be responses to a questionnaire. I think Patrice referred to the questionnaire that she has at Wilson. And so the responses will be written out with comments. Is that right? Yes.
Yeah, so it's basically answering the questions. Like usually it's, what's your favorite subject and why, or something along those lines, so they can kind of see what it is that you like and why you like that particular subject matter. It could be with your extracurriculars, what do you do for community service? It could be any of that, because again, they may not know what you do outside of the walls of the school. So just being able to elaborate on those questionnaires. And again, some teachers may ask, their separate questionnaire than a counselor questionnaire. We have 2 different ones, so it just depends on your school, what they use, or if someone's not asking for that, I would give it to them anyway. Just kind of go over a few things, almost like a little small resume, so they can kind of see what you've done throughout your 4 years or 3.5 years of high school, that they can add to that letter of recommendation that they may not know, that can kind of speak to you, speak to your character, speak to your integrity, speak to your, again, dedication. To a lot of times it's more than just the academic piece. And if you're dedicated to your church community or something else that speaks to, like, brings out, hey, like, schools are looking to find students that fit their mission and fit their community. So those letters can help add, outside of your application and your own personal essays, kind of add some things like, hey, this kid will be great in our school community. So those letters really help with that, finding out that fit, and if that student's going to do something once they arrive on that campus. They want kids that are going to thrive academically as well as socially. So that's everything that kind of makes up that unique.
And I have to say, all these threads, all these little pieces of information, they really add up to create you can't meet every applicant in person, but it does, all these threads add up so that admissions reps can get a good idea of how the student spends their time, what they're interested in, what their personality is like. And so every little bit of information is important. So just some things to be aware of. So taking, like we said, that, okay, thanks, goodbye approach, cornering the teacher and then just running out. Okay, be careful of that. And be careful of not automatically asking a teacher because you have an A in the class, or this teacher has known me the longest, or just because you really like that teacher. Think carefully about who can represent your strengths and who can speak on your behalf as you apply to college, right? So also take your high school instruction seriously. So Patrice has given us a little bit of an idea of what the students are responsible for. So make sure that you turn it in on time, that you have that college list in, that you have your counselor questionnaire complete and turned in, so that people can act and write the letters and send transcripts, and really allow for enough time. Really, early planning is really key. Letting your teachers know your deadlines so that you can, head back in the fall and you know who's writing for you, but you might have a really early, let's say a mid-October deadline, it's a really good idea to let your teachers know about early deadlines and your personal plans so they can work to, again, plan and have things done on time.
The whole like thanks, the K thanks bye approach, I definitely, please do not use the K, that how it's written there. No, I know a lot of times in this day and age, you guys have this shorthand stuff that you use. Please write out thank you, not thanks, not, and that's more appropriate. You're gonna have to learn how to write proper emails. Hopefully you like I blame it on social media and texting and everything these days, but no K thanks bye if, you know, after you've sent an email to a teacher to ask properly if they can write a recommendation for you. Please be appropriate with your emailing. Also, again, as Ms. Maureen said, is making sure that they know your deadline, even though once you make that letter recommendation request in Naviance, it will say what your deadline is. Make sure that they know in that email, just in case they want to not check Naviance, but start writing your letter recommendation and then upload it into Naviance later. They at least have a thoughtful, you know, in their mind, okay, this student needs this recommendation by this date. Also know, Maureen was getting to that, number 5, there are no college specific requirements. So if a college is only asking for 2 recommendations, only send 2 recommendations. Is that they do not want to read 10 recommendations from a student. It's overkill. The admissions process for reps is a very grueling when you have to go through 65,000 applications. And if you're not abiding by the college's qualifications or their application procedures, it doesn't look very good on you, because it lets them know you're just going to do whatever you want to do anyway. So making sure you're following and abiding by the rules and regulations of every college so you look like you know how to follow.
Right. Quick general advice for all students applying to college. Read the set of instructions, right? They're on the website. And each school will have a set of instructions for applying, and you really need to read them. So this is specific to the requirements of teacher recommendations, but know all of those instructions and be clear as you begin to submit your applications. Okay, and whoop, the big idea behind letters of rec. So I think, Patrice, do you want to go ahead? I think you spoke about this earlier.
Yes. So the whole thing about letters of recommendation, as we've been speaking about this entire night, is being able to figure out, how do you learn? What is your personality? How does being in a class setting help you thrive? What's your learning curiosity? And all of this comes together in that letter of recommendation. It's you have total control of how you are in a classroom setting, how you are with your peers, how do you work in a group setting. Every college some colleges will have different ways that they are teaching. They have project-based learning. They have all kinds of different ways that their students are going to be learning for the next 4 years. So that letter of recommendation is telling that admissions rep, this student learns this way, and this is why this student will be a great fit to your campus. And if you're not a great fit to that campus, there is going to be a campus that you're a great fit for. So that's where all of this context comes in, and this personal integrity and this character and everything that you can't put in your application yourself, or doesn't show up in a transcript, or doesn't show up in a letter grade. You can be a straight A student and have something outside of those A's. Maybe you're just really good at doing your homework, right? But what is it about you in that classroom, about you as a person, that's going to make you a great fit? It's kind of hard. Like, students have a really difficult time talking about themselves in their personal essays or their essays that they're writing. So, and that's the time that you need to brag the most about yourself. And that's totally okay, because that's how someone can get to know you on paper. But as far as the teachers and your counselors go, they're bragging for you. And so every little bit of context that you can provide to them will help with that letter, and give it's kind of like it gives the college admissions person another window, or looking at you through another lens that doesn't actually come out in the numbers. So that's why it's so important for, first of all, for you guys to be awesome students, so teachers want to write recommendations for you, but just being able to be thoughtful enough to ask the right teacher, actually having your teachers get to know you throughout. I know during, of course, our virtual learning, that's kind of difficult, but as Maureen said in the beginning of the webinar, is like, are your cameras on? Are you engaged? Are you dedicated? Are you motivated? And I know it's hard to be motivated right now. We're all burnt out with Zoom and Teams and all that kind of stuff. But are you a rock hard? Are you just, you know what, I know this is what we have right now. I'm going to be in it until we can go back into the school building. That speaks to you as a person. It speaks to your integrity. It speaks to your character, that no matter how difficult this time is, you stayed engaged in your classroom. You stayed engaged in your extracurricular activities, even if they were online. So that's telling an admissions rep about you and about your personal being. So again, your character. So that is why these letters are extremely important in this process.
So these letters, like we said, they're confidential, and and you won't read them, but you do have some control over the process. The nature of your ask, you have control over how you're going to ask your teachers, the materials that you provide your teachers, your follow-up, meaning giving any information about deadlines, and your thank you note, right? So those 4 spots you do have control over, and then, in your choice, you can just rest easy having done your work and know that your network will provide for you.
And I like a couple of the questions I'm getting, that some of this doesn't apply to a large public high school. Are you talking about more than 2,000 students or more than 500 seniors? And that, again, and this might have been an earlier question, but again, I work at the largest public high school in Washington, D.C. And again, we have 439 seniors. And again, we are writing 439 letters of recommendation. And that is where that brag sheet or questionnaire comes in. You will automatically get a letter of recommendation from your counselor. There was another question in there about someone that sees their counselor on a regular basis. Is it okay for them to write on your behalf? You will automatically get a counselor recommendation. It's part of that Naviance package of what documents come from your school. As Maureen stated earlier, you get your transcripts sent from your school profile, which they will know that you come from a large public high school. They'll know every bit about your high school. It goes to the regional rep, who also is extremely well aware of every situation at the high school that they're a representative of. You have the Common App school report, you have the NACAC school report. So all of this stuff is being reported. You got the council recommendation that also goes with that. And then you have the teacher recommendation that they send themselves. But all of that goes into this little cloud, and it sits there and waits for you to apply, and then it drops down on that regional rep's desk for a first read. So again, like, does this apply to large public high schools? Absolutely. We're the largest one. So yes, and that, again, that's where that brag sheet or that questionnaire comes in handy, where they can write a really well-written letter. And these letters of recommendation are 1-pagers. They're not 3, 4, and 5 pages long. They're a 1-page synopsis of how wonderful the student is. Even if they didn't have an opportunity to interact with you, they can at least speak on things that you're doing in the community. They may have seen you in the hallway. They may not know who you are. They may know who you are. But that is why that brag sheet is super important, because it's going to provide the context for that letter of recommendation, especially from the counselor.
Thank you. So I think, let's see, any other questions? Okay, I think just a comment. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. Again, Maureen Delaney, my email address is mdelaney@prepmatters.com. Patrice Arrington, patrice.arrington1976@gmail.com. And please, if you have questions, you can contact us there. Our next webinar coming up is Crafting a Compelling College Essay. And this will be with Katie Dunn, our Director of Education at Prep Matters. It will be Thursday, May 27th at 6 p.m. So be on the lookout for an email invite, and we hope you will join us then. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure speaking with you this evening. And again, if you have any questions, you can email either one of us, and we'll be more happy to answer your question.
Yeah. Have a great evening.